In this part one of a special two-part podcast series, I visit with Andrew McBride from Albemarle and Tapan Debnath from ABB about their company's journey through data analytics and data-driven compliance.
Say on behalf of KonaAI, thank you, gentlemen, for joining this podcast on data-driven compliance. I'm truly honored, Tom. Super grateful for you, the voice of compliance, to moderate this group. And with that, I'll turn it over to you to lead the conversation amongst the three of us. But really, it's about Andrew and Tapan.
Great, Vince. And thanks so much. Welcome, everyone, to one of the most significant first webinars of 2024. And it may be because it's the first, but it's certainly going to be one of the most significant because we're going to discuss leading innovations in data-driven compliance, a discussion with Andrew McBride from Albemarle and Tapan Debnath from ABB. First of all, welcome to all of our attendees and welcome to our guests. I'm going to ask you all to talk, or rather, tell us a little bit about your professional background and your current role. And Tapan, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Vince, also for giving me the opportunity to join you. It's a pleasure to be on this webcast. I saw the list of participants, and we have stakeholders and colleagues and professionals from different corporations, so it's great to see. So from my side, I'm a UK qualified lawyer. I've been working in this space of compliance and investigations and so on for the best part of 10, 12 years, but overall qualified for around 20 years. As I say, in the UK, I've had a stint at the Serious Fraud Office, and then after that, for the past few years at a couple of different in-house roles. My current role with ABB is as Head of Integrity, Regulatory Affairs, and Data Privacy for one part of ABB's business, which is effectively split up into 4 P&L entities. And in this role, it's a really broad role. And clearly, one of the key focuses for us that we'll be talking about is how we're managing compliance and integrity risks, and how we're utilizing data to help us move from more of a reactive footing to more of a proactive footing in this regard. Very happy to be on this call.
Andrew?
Thanks, Tom. And I'd like to echo Tapan's thanks to Tom and Vince for the invite to talk about data analytics and its role in compliance programs. I started out in private practice as an antitrust lawyer, and that was really my first exposure to data analytics. So I would work fairly closely with competition economists on the calculation of market shares and market concentrations and other market-related data. And I then moved in-house. Recurring theme throughout my career has been natural resources. So I was an in-house antitrust lawyer for BP, and then I moved on to BHP, the world's largest mining company. And while at BHP, my areas of responsibility grew from antitrust to other areas of compliance, but the recurring theme was the use of data to support the program. And that really carried on through to Albemarle. So I joined Albemarle back in 2018, initially as the Chief Compliance Officer, and built out the program, built the team here at Albemarle. And then there's perhaps a recognition of the increasing kind of complex risk profile that Albemarle and other companies face. I was appointed Chief Risk Officer. So I retained the responsibilities of Chief Compliance Officer, but I'm also responsible for enterprise risk management and insurance at the company.
So this webinar is particularly prescient from the perspective of the compliance practitioner for a couple of reasons. First of all, in late November, we had a major speech by the Department of Justice where they specifically called out the need for data-driven compliance or data analytics in a compliance program, in my mind, moving it from cutting edge to best practice. And frankly, it may move down now to even table stakes. Second of all, both of you guys have been part of team efforts around data-driven compliance. Tapan ABB has been implemented this multiple years ago and moving forward through the pendency of your FCPA journey. Andrew, your team was able to use data-driven compliance to help you and your company through that journey. And in the settlement resolutions, the Department of Justice called out your work in that area. And I know you have a lot of pride from both for your team and what you've been able to accomplish. And I wanted to maybe start with Andrew, how do you define a data-driven compliance program?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And before I address the question, I would like to emphasize your comment about it being very much a team effort. And we'll talk about the core efforts of the ethics and compliance team and then supporting functions, not least IT. But I appreciate the feedback. So that definition of the data-driven compliance program, I slightly rephrased. I was thinking about this morning of what is the purpose of using data and data analytics in the support of the ethics and compliance program, and I came up with 4 kind of key buckets. So first and foremost is risk identification. So you can use the data and the analytics as part of transaction testing and auditing to identify problematic behavior. It obviously supports the conduct of investigations, and then it can also highlight areas of residual risk. So where are your employees traveling around the world from a risk perspective? Are they traveling to high-risk locations? Or is there an increase in the number of use of high-risk vendors, perhaps because you've got some significant capital projects that are happening in a particular country? So that's one area, risk identification. The second is risk response. So you can use analytics as a form of control. So here at Albemarle, we use analytics as a way of a gatekeeper. We connect 2 different systems, our third-party due diligence system with our Salesforce system. If our Salesforce, our due diligence platform is flagging that a particular sales representative is no longer approved or no longer certified, it is telling Salesforce to shut that particular sales representative down, meaning that the sales team cannot issue a quote. So you're using data analytics to serve as a control. The third piece is then testing the effectiveness of your ethics and compliance program. And I think here it's very relevant to whether it be the Albemarle NPA or any NPA DPA, to take a look at attachment D and then also attachment C, because the focus of the post-reporting obligations that Albemarle and other companies face is really about the testing of the effectiveness of a compliance program and the criticality of data in supporting that. So if you think about each element of a compliance program, policies and procedures, training, due diligence and pre-approvals, the speak up and your investigation process, a recurring theme throughout that is the role of data to really test that those elements of your program are working as you intend. And then as a subset of that, to test how the compliance team and supporting gatekeeper functions are working. How long is due diligence taking to run? How long is it taking to undertake investigations? And then finally, reporting. So clearly the role of data is instrumental in the reporting that you have with internal stakeholders and then with your board. And that reporting can take many forms through dashboards, the utilization of metrics and the incorporation into presentations. And in my mind, you have to look at it through those 4 kind of like different lenses to really understand the true value of data analytics.
Tapan, I was struck by your opening remarks where you talked about moving from a reactive program to a proactive program through the use of data analytics. Could you maybe tie how ABB has been able to at least move forward, if not accomplish that, through your data-driven compliance program?
Yeah, look, what Andrew said is really resonating with me as well. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about exactly similar types of buckets of areas where data can help. But particularly in terms of your question, Tom, about how we're using data to move into more of a proactive footing rather than a reactive footing. Typically, a lot of what we do is responding, if it's not to an investigation, it's responding to a business need to go into a new market, work with a new sales channel, a new customer, etc., and assessing what the risks are involved with those types of different activities or the outcome of an investigation. Really, a big part of us responding to the deferred prosecution agreement that we're under right now, and we've completed year 1. We had the anniversary on the 2nd of December, and our strategy for year 2 and going forward is really be able to utilize all of the great data that we're mining right now, whether it's on the vendor side, the customer side, on projects, etc., and be able to issue spot. So we do a lot of work right now to identify trends. So where are the issues cropping up, whether it's geographically, whether it's on a particular business, using a particular type of going to market, whether it's through sales channels, etc., and then being able to address those specific risks by additional controls. And controls is really a key point for us as well. As Andrew mentioned, that data can help to enhance controls. So how are we moving from this footing to being more proactive? For starters, we've created something called, it's a platform in a nutshell, and it's called the Continuous Monitoring Platform, which is geared towards looking at vendors and customers and projects and getting data and being able to use that data to map against specific risk criteria that we've put into the tool. So this has been worked on for a few years with internal data analytics teams, starting from fresh with a clean slate, building this capability up. We've used KonaAI to test some of this, and thanks to Vince and team for doing a great deal of work on this to validate where we are, that it's working, and also give us a lot of input into how we move forward. And really, we're thinking, how do we move forward? And we're looking at expanding on what we're doing right now to really hone it in on specific identified risks that we've been seeing across the business, and using that platform to kickstart our next phase. So there's so much work going on right now, a lot of resources being devoted to it. Next step is, in a nutshell, to move to machine learning capability, and then after that to AI capability to be a bit more predictive. And this is where AI and other vendors are really going to be crucial in our journey. We've got, as I say, great in-house capability building all of this, and I can talk for ages. I'm not an expert in this area. We've got so many great people working on this, but I can talk for ages about how we're trying to move forward and the various parameters that we're looking at, and the various kind of discrete next step projects that we're looking at.
And Tom, real quick, if I could add just a comment on both companies. It's so refreshing to see both these companies integrate all the hard work they're doing around the due diligence systems, which I would say most of the companies, and even most of the companies in the audience, have a good due diligence system, background checks, etc., in those processes and questionnaires in place. But to see it actually move into taking that due diligence information and moving it into actually testing of transactions. Yes, our due diligence has identified a high-risk vendor. How much have you paid them? Or how much have you paid them over the years, or what have you? That linkage is so important now. And I think that's, when I think about a data-driven compliance program, it's not just having a good due diligence program, it's also having a due diligence program that integrates with the actual conduct of the business, where when invoices are being generated, payments are being made to third parties, that's where the risks happens. Due diligence is super important, but having an integrated process between those two systems is, to me, that's what's data-driven.
Andrew, if I could circle back to you in terms of what were some of the retooling or tech investments you and your team either put in place or perhaps even built internally, which allowed you to move forward in the Albemarle journey?
Yeah, and it has been a journey, and it is probably worth starting very briefly at the start. We started small, and with full transparency, we had a dependency on outside vendors. The first time that I saw a Tableau dashboard, it was mind-blowing for me, but we didn't have that kind of capability to build those and the supporting data. And so we relied on an outside vendor to help put those first dashboards together, which focused on third-party sales intermediaries and travel and expenses. But then we also realized that there were particular use cases where we thought that analytics, there were particular vendors out there where analytics, they had an offering which was for a discrete purpose that we could take on and it would fill a perceived or particular gap. And on expense management, we already had an expense management system. They had incorporated an AI type of expense review. We felt that was an interesting supplement to the dashboarding that we had done. Similarly, our due diligence provider utilizes AI for its kind of lower level risk screening. And we found that was a very helpful labor saving device for us. But we also realized that just having a complete outside dependency on analytics wasn't sustainable, that we wanted to build that internal capability ourselves. And so I took on a data scientist for a period, really to help me set up the architecture of what I wanted to achieve from an ethics and compliance data. And over that 6-month period, he was a great intermediary between myself and the IT team and outside vendors to really set up where were we going to store the data, how was it going to be organized, what the associated governance was going to be. And that very first dashboard that we put together to using that underlying kind of structure took a while. But then the more that you do, the easier it becomes. And we were able to become more adept at pulling data in, not just from SAP or from Salesforce, but from other sources of data as well. And that, to Vince's point, is where you get the real value. When you're combining different data sources, it can tell a picture which is greater than the sum of the individual parts. It's really very valuable. And so that got us to a certain point, and working with our data analyst on the team, who was an absolute rock star with going out and bringing data together and assimilating it, we also recognized that there were particular scenarios where we needed to go back outside, and that's where KonaAI came in. The volume of data on the procurement side is so great that what we needed to do to address the false positive issue is be enhancing the latest technology to really be focused on those high-risk transactions, and based on the feedback that my team give on whether or not it was a transaction of concern, our algorithm is learning, which means that the number of false positives becomes less and less. And so that for us has been the journey, is an initial outside dependency, then bringing it in-house, and then a more curated kind of discussion and selection of what is the appropriate analytics solution for us for a particular aspect of our ethics and compliance program, and then also beyond into things like human rights, modern slavery, data privacy, and other areas.
Tapan, if I could turn to you and ask you about the continuous monitoring platform. Obviously, you have multiple constituencies. You have a compliance function that's a part of this. You have obligations to the Department of Justice, but there's another constituency, which is the business unit and the folks that are actually out there making the sales. Could you talk about how you were able to either integrate the business unit in to the continuous monitoring platform, or perhaps even more importantly, how can the business unit use the tool that compliance has created to do business more efficiently and hopefully at the end of the day for ABB more profitably?
Tom, getting the business on board with everything that we're doing from the compliance space is really crucial. And we've been working on this for several years. And the way we've been doing this is making data and information available to the business. So demystifying what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to, let's say, assessing risk, giving approvals on transactions, and so on. Part of this process has involved, one, giving visibility where we can on investigations. We have close alignment with the senior business stakeholders involved where, let's say, an issue has cropped up. So they're not surprised at the end of an investigation that something has happened and there needs to be remediation, terminations, etc. As part of this, we also make available one-page learnings on cases, really anonymized. So this goes out to not just the leaders, but the whole business. So demystifying what goes on the investigation side with adequate safeguards for data privacy, human rights, HR type of topics, not disclosing too much. That's one. But when it comes to the other sources of data that we have, two key platforms that are available. One is called the integrity analytics platform, available to everyone across the business. It is the repository for data on certain integrity KPIs that we have. And we have one on trust, which measures cases being reported anonymous versus named. And this can be crunched down into business units, geographies, and so on and so forth. And that is a little bit of a barometer on, is there a potential issue of people fearing retaliation and high numbers of anonymous reporting. We have also a data KPI on transparency, which is conflict of interest declarations. So conflict of interest, as we know, can be a precursor for other types of issues. And we monitor this and crunch this down to various levels. And the final one is engagement, which is people going onto our portal to take trainings and measuring, how that's going on. So this is a little bit high level. But then we have a separate platform on investigations data, which is available to the L&I folks, and that gives more detailed data on cases and so on. Separate to that, we have something called the Integrity Gateway. The Integrity Gateway is a tool that we've developed over the past few years. It's for declarations of conflict of interest. It's for approvals for gifts, travel, and hospitality, which go above a certain threshold and therefore require approval. So that data, again, is able to be analyzed, put onto platforms, given to the business, and so on. We also have reporting, as you'd expect, on a monthly basis on integrity insights. So this is the business areas looking at what is going on in the business, what are the key insights that the leadership need to be aware of, and we report on this on a monthly basis. So bringing the business on board with the journey by way of making data available has been really fundamental. Then going to how is the business utilizing this and supporting us. Over the past, let's say, 6 to 8 months, as part of our reporting on the deferred prosecution agreement internally and what's going on, how are we demonstrating our program is effective and so on, we've been bringing the business along in the journey with us. To be fair, some of the businesses buy into all of this is driven by risks that are occurring on a real-time live basis within their business. So they're seeing a risk. They're then appreciating that the need to not keep the same way of operating, responding to a risk, but trying to be on the front foot. So with some of the things that we're doing with data analytics and moving to a proactive footing, the business are really supporting us on this. And in fact, they're helping us to drive some of this now. So we've got project teams who have been stood up in one part of our business who want to really look at this and drive this. And we're having separate discussions on how to mine our data lake and make that data available not just to certain select people, but our data analytic guys within the business who are supporting us with getting onto that proactive footing. So apologies for the long answer, but there is a lot, and getting the business on board has been really key. And it's been one of our successes, quite honestly. And I'm seeing really the leadership really buying into this. And as I say, really driving some of this.
I want to turn the focus just a little bit, because one of the real values in my mind on having both of you guys here is to perhaps guide us through, if not pitfalls, perhaps some challenges that you've faced and overcome.
We want to get the word out. Data-driven compliance is an expectation. Frankly, it's a lot of fun. And I think 2024 is really going to be a breakthrough year. Remember, generative AI only came out in November of 2022. And we really only had a year to digest it. And even the tools, we're trying to develop some of these things, and even the tools to develop them are changing as fast as the innovations and use cases. So it's even hard to even keep up with the tools because they change almost monthly. It's just getting better and better. So there's, I think, a lot of good use cases for it. But again, it's not about using AI for the sake of AI. It needs to drive a decision or solve a problem. And so practical use cases is key. Andrew, Tapan, any closing remarks from your end?
And the only thing I would say, and I suspect Tapan agreed, to the extent that people are going through their ethics and compliance data analytics journey and they want to kick the tires, soundboard, happy to, by all means, reach out. Happy to help out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Vince, I echo this as well. I'm more than happy to take a call and just discuss things. But otherwise, just to say thank you again.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the award-winning Data-Driven Compliance. If you've enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. Data-Driven Compliance is sponsored by KonaAI and is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network.